room. And I'm going to start this over. There we go. Okay, sorry guys. So I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation over. I am doing my presentation on adolescence and social media. And so the first thing that I want to make known in my presentation is that this is simply something to be aware of. The reason why I decided to look into this is that it's been a very prevalent topic of conversation among people who are older than me and have children who are adolescents, or like friends, family, who are actual, like they're 17, 18 years old, and they're part of that guinea pig generation where they all had social media. People are saying it's a problem. And so I wanted to explore the research on it. So first and foremost, let us recognize that there is not a DSM diagnosis that is related to social media use. However, kiddos aged 13 to 14, 79% of them were found to have an active social media account by Boursier. And then ages 15 to 17, 84% of those kiddos were found to have an active social media account. They also found that YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat were the most popular social media platforms. So what is the problem here? Actually, you know what? Let's go back. Skipped it. Sorry, I'm using a new platform for these PowerPoints and it's new for me. So the hypotheses that I found in the research, you know, I shared with you that I've had conversations with people and they keep saying it's a problem with identity and stress and anxiety. I wanted to see what research was looking into. So one of the studies that I read was looking into social media's impacts on psychological and social well-being, as well as school functioning. Another one was whether or not social media increases appearance anxiety. And then the other one was whether or not it increases negative ADHD symptomology. And that Boyer, whatever, I don't even know how to say that name. What they were actually looking into is whether or not there's kind of like a feedback loop with ADHD-like symptoms and social media use. Does the proclivity to attention deficits cause a lure into social media use? Does social media use cause an increase in attention deficits? Things like that. So those were the various things that I found in research. But something that's important to know is that research volume is very low on this topic. So research, evidence-based practice, can't necessarily say what the problem actually is with social media yet. Some of the language that was found in my research was this kind of tension between intensive use or problematic use or addictive use. And basically, intensive use is somebody who just uses it a lot, whereas problematic use and addictive use were kind of used interchangeably. And I'll show you the criteria that was used to determine that in just a moment. But another thing to note is that there's a lot of contradictory results in research so far. Baseline findings are like intensive use can be beneficial and problematic use or addictive use can be harmful. But whenever these studies would look into the differences between male and female use, there was a lot of contradictory findings. So it's very hard to say specifically what the actual problem is right now. So some of these findings, Van den Einden found that heavy and intensive use has a positive impact on developing and maintaining social friendships, whereas problematic use has a negative impact on life satisfaction and GPA. And then Boursier found that girls reported a higher appearance anxiety than boys in general, but boys' appearance anxiety was a predictor of them using social media in harmful ways. Boyer found that social media use problems caused an increase in ADHD symptoms, but not social media use intensity, just the problems caused it. Adolescents whose social media use problems increased also experienced an increase in their attention deficits a year later. And adolescents with more prevalent ADHD symptoms were not more sensitive or drawn to social media features, which was predicted. So here's the criteria for when the research is using the term addictive social media use, which is not diagnosable. This is some of the criteria found in the DSM for behavioral addictions. First is salience, where the use becomes the most important daily activity, and there's like a mental preoccupation with that use. Second is mood modification, which includes mood alterations, pleasant feelings, or using causes like a numbing effect. The third is tolerance, that those mood modifications, you have to use social media more and more and more to experience that same level of feelings as when first starting to use. The fourth is withdrawal, that let's say somebody's stuck in the middle of nowhere and they don't have access to social media for a little while, they're going to start dealing with some psychological and physiological symptoms that are negative. Fifth is relapses. Somebody decides, I'm going to give it up, and they are unsuccessful to resist using social media. And then the sixth is conflict, that the use of social media causes conflict in their life. Either it's intrapsychic, like they have a battle in their own head with themselves, or interpersonal conflicts with other people. But the important thing to note here is that that conflict is supposed to clinically impair somebody's individual health. So here's another thing for us to just keep in mind is that with this age group, there are some developmental concerns that social media use might be impacting. And just for me personally, I definitely want to keep an eye on, should I work with this population? How do these developmental needs and occurrences work together with a child's social media use? So the first is identity formation and integration is very prevalent, and insecurity is common. So a child is developing their sense of identity, and then they have a tool to create an identity. Is this beneficial or harmful? The second is social development, which involves a strong need to belong and be accepted. They're looking to their peers for support, and they're very vulnerable to humiliation. One thing that is very known, just through news media at this point in time, so sorry, is that cyberbullying is definitely a prevalent problem. So whether or not a child is experiencing support and getting likes, or their experience on social media is neutral, or they're getting a lot of negative comments, that's going to be very important to their development. Another one is that negative emotions are very prevalent. So this is when depression and anxiety and guilt and shame are very common for this age group. They just naturally have those emotions more often. Is social media a healthy outlet for those emotions, or is it exacerbating them in some way, form, or fashion? Another is that physical development is awkward at this stage in life. So the study that looked into appearance anxiety, I think this is very important to keep in mind, is that in this age group, there's a lot of weight gain. Kids start developing their secondary sex organs, and they're kind of clumsy and uncoordinated because some body parts are developing faster than others. And so a sense of physical security in body image, is social media helping them explore these changes that they're experiencing, or is it giving them a space where they're hearing more negative comments, comparing themselves to other people who maybe are editing their images, or just naturally thin, or more developed, etc., and so forth. And then the last one is the cognitive development that they go through in this stage of life. They're very egocentric and self-conscious. So thinking about themselves a lot. They're growing in their ability for abstract thinking and to plan, and they're developing skills in self control and emotion regulation. So, again, these are just concerns that I think when working with this population and knowing that they're either involved in social media or have some sort of like uh, fear of being left out by not having social media, how is that interacting with these developmental norms, experiences, and needs? So some interventions that could be useful if there are some problems that a child is experiencing due to social media use, if they're dealing with those self-esteem issues around appearance anxiety, or if they're having some body dysmorphic ideations, or even just flat out body dysmorphia, and social media is a part of their experience, their daily living. Solutions focused is very, very helpful, because having somebody be able to create their own solution and then see some positive impacts boosts that self-esteem. So just the very operation of how those interventions work addresses the issue. With cyberbullying, Adlerian interventions were suggested by Verdon and Schimmel in our class text. With addictive use, just from experience, motivational interviewing and cognitive behavioral interventions are very helpful. Motivational interviewing helps someone get to a next stage of change, and cognitive behavioral interventions can help address whatever issue is underlying what drew that person to that addiction. If someone is dealing with ADHD, as one of the studies suggested, and social media is a component, behavior therapy is very helpful, especially in creating some structure and then simplifying some tasks. And then finally, emotional disturbances. So while none of the research that I found had to do with any depression or anxiety that might be caused by social media, if somebody is dealing with social media or is dealing with depression and anxiety, and social media is a component of their lives, whether or not we can prove that there's a relationship between those two, we can still use our EBT and CBT, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, and physical activity. And again, those are from our text. These are my references. So I do just want to cap off that there are some concerns to keep in mind when working with this population if they are using social media, or if they're dealing with like envy and fear of missing out by not being on social media, and any of the common issues that they deal with. We do want to keep an eye out on research and what they find, because there might be a correlation between social media use and some negative impacts that it could be having on this population that we don't know about yet. We just haven't discovered it through research. So staying abreast on what's going on in research regarding this topic is going to be very important, as well as if there is any development of a DSM diagnosis. And my number one thing that I want to just really drill home with this presentation is do not diagnose it if it doesn't exist. So we definitely want to wait until there is an official diagnosis before we start labeling kiddos and giving them diagnoses concerning this topic of their life. Thank you, guys.